Hello everyone, it's Melanie of Vintage Hill Studio. I am so excited to bring you this project today. It's two of my favorite things, butterflies and old books. I will be using one stamp to make 3 cards. I can't wait to share this with you. I'll be using this rubber stamp set from Ink-A-Dink-A-Doo, this clear stamp set from Momenta, and of course the star of the show, an old book that was ready to be thrown in the trash. You can see that the spine on this book is a little broken down. It was meant for the trash. I cannot, in good conscience, deconstruct a good book. But if it was bound for the trash, then I have no problem repurposing this. Look at the pictures in here and the book page. It's just lovely. Okay, here is that Ink-A-Dink-A-Doo stamp. It is cling on one side and red rubber on the other. I will be using this butterfly for my cards today, and I'm going to go through and choose some pages, and I am going to avoid the ones that have these wonderful pictures on them because I have ideas for other projects for anything with the picture. I'm actually going to be using 4 book pages today. One of my favorite tools, the Caterpillar Pro. This is a paper trimmer. I got this at a Great American Scrapbooking Convention. It has this great roller wheel, and every time you go back and forth to cut your paper, it self-sharpens the blade. That is a win to me. And then it also has this light bar, so when I flip on my light, I can easily see through these book pages and any other lightweight paper. Now, depending on your cardstock, the light bar doesn't really work on heavyweight cardstock, of course. But like I said, for these book pages, which are fairly thin, I can see in between the lines of text, which helps me cut down my pages to 3.5 by 5 inch panels. So I've got all 3 of my panels cut down and ready to go. Then I'll bring over 1 extra book page. You can see I did not cut that down to size. I have a different idea for that. So I brought over my Mini Misty stamping platform. This is going to come in really handy. I want very bold black images against the text on these old book pages. So when I looked through my stash, I was purposefully looking for stamps like this with that bold edge. So the Mini Misty, the magic in this stamping platform or any stamp platform is that when you go over with your ink, you can stamp in the same exact place however many times you need to get that very black stamped image. So I go over these at least 2 times. And when I'm happy with the edges being very crisp and bold, then I'll move on to my next panel. Okay, so here, another plus to the Mini Misty, I bring over the exact same size panel and I don't have to move my stamp around. I just leave it in the same location that I used it on the first panel, and you can quickly mass produce several cards this way if you're wanting your stamped image in the exact same location. All right, now I'll move on. While I've got my butterfly in there, I'm using this other page that I did not cut down to the same size as the other panels because I'm going to stamp 2 butterflies. The reason I'm doing this is I want to give myself a choice. Each one of these cards is one of a kind, like any other art form. I'm going to use different hues within my watercolor palette. One will be a little more subtle and maybe one a little more bold, and that will give me something to choose from when I get to the point of adding this to my finished card. I plan on fussy cutting out these butterflies and popping them up on foam tape, so that's why it doesn't matter what type of panel it's on here, this rough panel. I also don't care about those circles behind the butterflies. Those will be cut away when I do my fussy cutting. All right, let's let those set aside to let that ink really dry, and I'm going to move on to the Momenta floral stamp. I absolutely love this cling stamp set. It is small but mighty. Again, I want a very bold impression against this book page, even though the details of this stamp are very fine and very delicate. By stamping them a couple of times, I can ensure that that is stamped in the blackest of black, so that it at least has a chance to show up on this busy book page. And I will be adding color to this stamped image later on in the video, and that will make it come to life as well. Even though it's hard to see at this point, it will work out. Stamp that 2 times as well, especially up in the top area where most of the flower heads are. And there are my panels. Now there's the watercolor tubes that I'll be using, a little palette. You can see I've squeezed out just little spots of color, and believe it or not, those little bitty spots are enough to do every one of the panels for this week's project. You don't need very much watercolor paint. Now I'm using a small flat brush and some water, and I'm going to dilute my colors quite a bit so that when I go over to add them to my book page, it is very translucent. I want to be able to see the text behind the painting. And you know what? I don't know what these pages are made out of. If anybody knows any history about the old book pages, I know it's wood fibers, but look how it takes the watercolors, and your blending is seamless. Oh my word, this is so much fun painting on these old book pages. It makes you look like a professional, and believe me folks, I am not a professional at anything, especially not watercoloring. I love to watch artists do watercolor, but you know, it's not my forte. It's not what I'm an expert at, but I love to dabble. And this is so much fun and such a fun medium to work on with these book pages. If you've got any information about old book pages for me, drop me a message in the comments. I'd love to hear that. And also, if you've done any projects on old book pages, let me know. I love hearing your stories. And I love it when you tell me you were inspired by any of my videos. So please feel free to leave me comments. After I work on each panel, I'm going to set those aside. Okay, now this one, I'm doing just the opposite of the first panel. I am going to paint the background behind the butterfly, leaving the butterfly in the plain book page text color. So you can see I'm using a very light wash here of the same blue that I used on the first panel. In fact, I'm using a lot of the same colors between panels because I liked how those colors went together. This is a very, very light wash, and then you can see if I get a little less water, I can intensify the hue of this blue. So much fun, still leaving it translucent. But of course, I also don't want to introduce a lot of water to these book pages. They are old and they are very porous, which makes a great medium for this watercolor method, but at the same time, you don't want your pages to warp up or curl. So try to keep a light hand with the amount of water that you're putting on your book page. Water and book pages have never meshed well together, right? And they don't now either. So anyway, look at this. This is the same color of blue, just a different intensity of water. And I'm going to go all the way down my page, and I'm trying to do a wet on wet technique. Now, of course, this is not watercolor paper, and watercolor paper dries pretty quickly, but to me these book pages don't dry quite as quickly, so you don't have to be rushed, but the wet on wet painting allows for the seamless blending. Oh, it's so yummy how these colors blend all the way up and down. Please give this a try if you've ever want to experiment with watercolors. You don't have to have expensive supplies. Just give it a little try. I think the cake watercolor pans would work as well. You just want to make sure your water to paint ratio is right. Practice on some scrap paper before you go over to your book page and see what works for you. Okay, so there's a double meaning behind this project today. Number one, butterflies come from chrysalis, and chrysalis means new beginnings as they morph from the chrysalis into the butterfly. And the double meaning here is that I'm giving new life to these old book pages that were bound for the trash. So I feel like this is a win-win project, and I just love repurposing things that can be repurposed into a new project like this. And it's very satisfying and gratifying to me to do this. So there's the double meaning behind my cards today. All right, while we're working on butterflies, let's get these twins going here. I'm going to use the same blues and purples that I've used in the other panels, and I am not worried about going outside the lines on this. I'm not going to worry about those circles stamped behind the butterflies, because again, I'm going to fussy cut these out to make a three-dimensional butterfly for the front of the panel that will have those flowers. Oh my word, look at this blending. I mean, it makes me feel like I know what I'm doing, and I don't. This is just dabbling and playing and having fun. But I think if you tried this on some old book pages like this, you would find yourself nicely surprised as well that you can do this. Okay, here's where I'm working on a more vibrant butterfly. One vibrant, one subtle. Don't know which one I'm going to use until I'm ready to put them on my card front, but what a fun thing to have on hand. You can always keep one for another project. Use one on the card today and one for another project later. No downside in being prepared for future projects, right? Okay, I'm going to finish these up and set those aside to dry. And if I can quit playing with this, just having so much fun. And then I will start working on this flower watercolor panel. Now, this was fun. I've used a couple of greens just to give a little interest, and now I've switched to a number 3 round brush, which is all I need because these are very, very finely detailed pieces of the stamp. All these stems and leaves and such, and this is all I need. I'm working on just a damp little brush. It doesn't have much water in it at all. So again, I can see the text even through these finer detailed images. Now, let me ask you, do you like reading the original books with these old pages? Any type of printed page? Or do you prefer audio and Kindle books? Those are very convenient. I have friends who like each of those things. But for me, I still like to carry the book. I like to feel the weight of it in my hand. I like to use bookmarks. I love flipping the pages. So for me, this is an extra special project. Like I said, saving a book from the trash, possibly giving it new life through a different art form of cards. I just really love books. So let me know in your comments below which you prefer. What type of reading material do you like to work from? Now when I move on to my flowers here, you can see I'm concentrating the darker color around the centers of my flower. And then I add a little bit of water to my brush and dab it off on my paper towel and pull out from the center to the edges of my petals. And that gives you a natural shading and highlighting with just one color. So that's just a little tip I'd like to share with you if you're going to give this a try. And I think you will be pleased with the outcome there. And look how this is coming to life. When I went to do my color palette for this, I just chose 3 colors. I don't want to detract from the beauty of the butterfly that's going to go on the top of this card. I just want them to complement one another. So I have kind of that salmon red color, and I chose a yellowish gold hue. And I'll bring over a little bit of blue for those thistly looking flowers. And then of course my greens, and that's it. I want it again to complement the colors of the butterflies that I've already painted without detracting from it. So that's kind of a little bit of trickery there. You don't want to go crazy with all the colors on this panel, but even with this little flower panel, that would stand alone for a beautiful card front, and add a sentiment at the top if you didn't want to use your extra butterflies. So there's lots of possibilities with this project. Okay, finishing this up, and then I will set this aside to dry as well. And we will be ready to move on with finishing up our cards. Now I know this video is a little longer this week, but again, I'm making 3 cards. And if you consider how long it takes to make one card, this really didn't take that long to do all 3 while you had your stamps out and your watercolors ready and all of that business. Okay, I'll finish this up. There we go. Set it aside to dry, and the next thing we're going to do is bring over some papers to mat these. Now I love my marbled papers. I'm only going to be using a slim little mat 3 1/4 by 5 1/4. I mean 3 3/4 by 5 1/4. Sorry about that. And very little of that's going to show, but I do like the variation that comes with these marbled papers. So I can see at a glance just by holding those up what appeals to me visually pretty quickly, and then I'm going to go with that. So I've cut my mats out. They're ready to go. I'm still going to let these panels dry a little bit more, and then I will get these put together a little later on. See, these are going to look beautiful together. All right, now I'm ready to go to those twin butterflies, and I'm going to add a very heavy cardstock to the back of each butterfly. Now I can see where to apply my adhesive from the back of this book page. And the reason I'm putting this heavyweight cardstock on the back, again, I'm going to fussy cut these out, and one of them will be popped up on foam tape and add it to the front of that panel with the flowers at the bottom. So I wanted them to have a little more stability, and by adding that cardstock to the back and letting that dry, that will do the trick for me. While I'm letting all of that dry, I've mixed a little bit of black and white watercolor, and I'm going to get that mixed up into a nice gray to do some shading around this one panel that had the colored butterfly only, because it was looking a little plain to me. So by doing this extra little step, again using my flat brush for this, and you can add as much or as little shading as you want. If it gets a little heavy, get back into your water and go over it. It's going to visually give this butterfly a 3D look. It's going to visually make this little guy just pop off the page when this is all dry. And I love the way that came out as well. Just a little more detail. It doesn't take that long to do, but it adds a nice finishing factor for the front of this panel. Nice. I'll be setting that aside to dry. See how that kind of pops off the page. Now my twin butterflies are ready. So I'm going to simply fussy cut. I am staying right along that black border of the wings. I do not want to leave a white border because it wouldn't show at all anyway when you put this on your book page. I like that bold black. I want it to stand out from the front book page panel. So I'll get those cut out. I am saving the antenna, even though those are a little pain to cut out. And then to finish it off, I'll go around the edges with a black Sharpie. This will conceal any of that cardstock that I used to glue my book page to, especially since I'm going to pop this up on foam tape. Okay, now I'm ready to get these panels put down on those mats that we cut out. And I'll add some liquid adhesive, get those put down, and go over them with my brayer to really smush that adhesive around between the book page and the mat. I just want really good adhesion here. Alright, I'll get each one of those done, and then I'm bringing over a Heidi Swap stamp set. Again, when I was looking through my stash, I wanted to have a font that is a little more bold than usual. And as you can see, the word beautiful here is quite bold. You need to pick some kind of font with some boldness to it so that, again, it stands out against the text of that book page. If you were to pick a finer font, it would just blend in with the text. I think you would be disappointed in that. So look for something that's a little more bold. Get that put on the front of your card as many times as you need to stamp it. Again, using a stamping platform comes in very handy here, as you can restamp in the same position as many times as you need to. So this Heidi Swap set also has a little smaller font that says "You Are," and I'm going to add the words "You" and "Are" above the word "Beautiful." Now it is smaller. I wasn't sure how this would turn out, but it turned out just fine. Again, with that onyx black ink, you can see this is going to be very legible even against the busy text of that book page. So this will say "You Are Beautiful." I don't want to press hard because I don't want to smear those words. Sometimes if you press too hard, it kind of smears your words. I don't know, it just gets kind of blobby. All right, there we go. And then my cards are 4 by 5.5 inch. These are heavyweight cream cardstock, and I'm going to get each of my matted book pages put down on the card fronts, and that leaves me just this one card left, and this is where our twin butterflies come into play. You can see you can pick which one looks best to you, add a little bit of that foam tape to each wing and some adhesive down the body, and that will finish off that 3-dimensional card. I love adding dimension to my cards, and this does the trick right here. So this will finish off my cards for this week. I hope you enjoyed this video, that you get inspired to look for some old books that are bound for the trash, that maybe you try a little dabbling into watercolor and see what happens for you. And I am so excited you dropped by again today. Thank you to all my followers. It was good to see you again, and hope to see you again next week. If you're new to my channel, please feel free to become a new subscriber. If you're looking from your phone, you can look down in the description. There's a little subscribe button. If you're watching from your laptop, I have a subscribe button throughout my video and also at the end. And I have a couple of more old book page projects for you at the end of this video if you want to link over and watch how those were made. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and happy crafting, everyone.